Let's look at rounding decimals. Rounding decimals works the same as rounding off any number. So all I've built is a little success criteria of steps to follow to round decimals off, and we'll apply it to some whole numbers first. So step number 1 is to identify the place we are rounding to. So we're rounding off to the nearest ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, tenths, hundreds. Is it the second decimal place, third decimal place? We'll get to that in a second. We then need to look one place value column to the right. Then, if the digit in that place is a 0 to 4, we round down. Or if the digit is 5 or higher, then we round up. Okay, let's have a look at some examples. The first example here, we want to round it to its nearest 10. Okay, so I'm going to find the place value column we are rounding to. That is the tens column. Our next step is to find the place value column one column to the right. We now know that the one value to the right is the ones column, and there is a 4 in that ones column. So that tells us, because it's 0 to 4, we need to round this number down. So rounding 154 to its nearest 10 would be 150. Let's have a look at the second example. We want to round to the nearest 100. So what number is in the hundreds column? I'll circle it. 300. Let's look one place value column to the right, and we find a 9. Because it is a 5 to 9 or a number 5 or above, we need to round it up. So therefore, the nearest 100 to 392 is 400. So you can see I've rounded that up to its nearest 100. Down to its nearest 100 would be 300, but you can see it is not that because it is a 9 here. So it's far closer to 400 than it is to 300. The last one, we're rounding to our nearest 1,000. So the 2 is in the 1,000 column. And let's look to the right. You can see in this case that the next number is a 5. So in this case, the 5 tells us it is awkward because you might think it is in the middle, but 5 or above, you always round up. So the nearest 1,000 to this number is 3,000. Let's apply this to some decimals. Let's take a look at the first. It says round 3.4823 to the nearest tenth. So let's find the tenths column. Ones, we'll circle the tenths, hundredths, thousandths, tens of thousands. Then we need to look one place value column to the right. That is where we see an 8. That means it's above 5 or higher, so we're going to round this number up. So the one that we round up is the one in the tenths column. So that now becomes, instead of 3.48, that is going to become 3.5. So you can see that this number in this case is 3.48 is closer to 3.5 than it is to 3.3. So that's why we have rounded it up. Then we just need to leave. You don't need to write anything after the 5 because we assume that zeros fill all those spare place value columns. So it's not required. 3.5 is 3.4823 rounded to the nearest tenth. Let's look at the second example. 56.6743 to the nearest thousandth. So let's find the thousandths column. That's the tens, that's the ones, tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So I'll circle it, the thousandths. One column to the right, we need to look at the value because it's going to tell us whether we're going to go rounding up or rounding down. You can see that it is less than 5, so we're going to round this down. So that means this number will stay the same. So 56.674. So in this case, we're saying that this number is closer to 56.674 than it is to 56.675. And you can see that because that's indicated by the 3. Often questions may ask us to round to the amount of places indicated in a bracket. First question, we will round this to 1 decimal place. So 1 decimal place is the first number after the decimal point. Yet again, we apply the same strategy. We've found the place value we want to round to, so we need to look 1 to the right, and that's going to tell us to round up or down. A 9 tells us to round up. In this case, because the 9 in this column here, this 9 here, cannot go any higher unless we change the place value of the next one across. So it's essentially carrying across. Rounding this 9 up causes it change to a 10. So in this case, you can't have 10 in one place value column. We need to carry one across. So it becomes 26.0. So in this case, the question was saying, is this number closer to 25.9 or is it closer to 26? So it is closer to 26. Second one, round to 5 decimal places. So we'll find the 5th decimal place, which is the 0. Look to the right, will tell us whether to round up or round down. It's a 1, so we need to round this number down. 8.4518. So that is correct to 5 decimal places. You may recognize that you don't necessarily need that 0 as a placeholder, but it is fine to show it knowing that you've rounded it off to 5 decimal places and knowing that that decimal place was a 0. This one we're rounding to 2 decimal places. So the second decimal place you can see is the 0 there in the hundredths column. 1 to the right, it's a 9 again, telling us that we're going to round up. So, corrected 2 decimal places, we round that 0 and move it up. We're going to have 0.11. So that is correct to 2 decimal places. I've just added a couple more just to confirm what we have learned in this video. To 3 decimal places, find the number that is in the 3rd decimal place. So 3rd number after the decimal, and then look 1 spot to the right. It is a 4, telling us that we need to round down. So the number in this column will stay the same when we're rounding down. So it'll be 7.632, correct to 3 decimal places. This one we are rounding to 2 decimal places. So we'll go and find the number in the 2nd after the decimal. 1, 2. Look 1 number to the right. We'll see that it is a 2 as well. So we're going to round down, meaning that this one will stay the same. So 153.65. So the important points from this video are: identify the place that we are rounding to. So if we go back to our final example, 2 decimal places, find the second number after the decimal, which was the 5. Then the second step is to look 1 place value column to the right. So it's the 2. That number will tell you whether to round up or round down. Importantly, remember that 0 to 4 means that you round down, meaning that this number in the previous column will often stay the same. If it is a 5 or a higher, we always need to round up. So as we've seen in some previous examples, with this one rounding to 2 decimal places, 9 was higher than 5, so we rounded up.